We are getting there, step by step.
दुनिया में कुछ लोग कहते हैं और कुछ लोग करते हैं। जब कहा गया देश में सोलर पावर सफल नहीं हो सकता है, तो हमने सुना नहीं, उसे सफल कर दिखाया। कहा देश का सबसे बड़ा पावर प्लांट बनाना इम्पॉसिबल, तो हमने पॉसिबल कर दिया। बोला कोने कोने तक बिजली पहुंचाना किसी के बस की बात नहीं है, हमने पहुंचा दी। सवाल उठे एनवायरमेंट फ्रेंडली गैस सब तक कैसे पहुंचेगी? हमने वो भी पहुंचा दी। कहा तो ये भी गया पैकेज फूड बिजनेस हमसे नहीं हो पाएगा, लेकिन हमने कर दिखाया। बातें उठी सीमेंट सेक्टर में हम कभी स्ट्रांग नहीं बन सकते, तो हमने सुना नहीं, बन के दिखाया। चर्चा हुई देश में इतना बड़ा पोर्ट बनाना असंभव, हमने संभव कर दिखाया। और जब कहा गया देश के एयरपोर्ट्स इंटरनेशनल स्टैंडर्ड्स के नहीं हो सकते, तब भी हमने सुना नहीं, कर दिए। मुश्किलों की नहीं सुनते, हम करके दिखाते हैं।
Ladies and gentlemen, requesting everybody to kindly be seated. We are all set to go ahead with the proceedings of the valedictory session. आप सभी से निवेदन है कृपया शीघ्र अपने स्थान ग्रहण कर लें। हम कुछ ही समय में समापन सत्र की शुरुआत करने जा रहे हैं। निवेदन करना चाहेंगे आप कृपया मोबाइल फोन्स को भी स्विच ऑफ मोड पर ही रखें। So, ladies and gentlemen, we are all set to go ahead with the proceedings of the valedictory session, requesting all mobile phones to be kept on to silent mode, everybody to be seated, and the exit doors to be closed, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now moving ahead with the proceedings of the valedictory session. And I have the proud privilege in inviting on stage Shri Jishnu Barua, Chairperson CERC. Let's put our hands together to welcome Shri Jishnu Barua ji. Inviting Shri Praveer Sinha ji, Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director, Tata Power Company. Let's put our hands together to welcome Shri Praveer Sinha ji. We welcome Shri Ankit Hoshing, Partner YCP Optus. Warm welcome to you, sir. Inviting Shri Abhishek Kaustubh, Director E&Y. Inviting Shri Anish Dey, Partner KPMG. I have the proud privilege in inviting Shri Ghanshyam Prasad ji, Chairperson CEA. Also inviting Shri Arpan Gupta, Director and Head Mines, Metals and Energy, FICCI, to kindly grace the stage with his august presence. I would once again like to invite Shri Ankit Hoshing sir, Partner YCP Optus, to kindly grace the stage with his presence. Namaskar and good afternoon. Eminent dignitaries on the dais, our special invitees, distinguished guests, speakers, respected members of the press and media, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to the valedictory session of the brainstorming event on the Indian power sector scenario 2047, organized on this momentous occasion of the CA Golden Jubilee celebrations. केंद्रीय विद्युत प्राधिकरण की स्वर्ण जयंती के अवसर पर आयोजित समारोह एवं सम्मेलन के समापन सत्र में आप सभी का हार्दिक स्वागत है. Over the past 2 days, we have engaged in insightful discussions deliberated on the challenges and opportunities in India's power sector and explored innovative ideas to shape a sustainable energy future. We honor to have some of the most influential leaders from the Ministry of Power, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, and other industry experts to conclude this significant event. I would now request Shri Ghanshyam Prasad ji, Chairperson CA, to kindly do the honors of welcoming and honoring our dignitaries on the dais. We welcome and honor Shri Jishnu Barua ji, Chairperson CERC. A very warm welcome, sir. And a small token of gratitude. We welcome and honor Shri Praveer Sinha ji, Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director, Tata Power Company Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, as you would have noticed, both the jade plant and a memento, a token of gratitude, a lotus, both are symbol for prosperity. We welcome and honor Shri Ankit Hoshing, sir. He's not here yet. We would like to welcome Shri Abhishek Kostab, Director ENY. It is said that jade plant brings luck and a lotus brings prosperity. Thank you, CA, for giving us such a wonderful memento. We welcome and honor Shri Anish Dey, Partner KPMG. And we would like to welcome and honor Shri Arpan Gupta, Director and Head Mines, Metals and Energy from FICCI. Thank you very much indeed, sir, for doing the honors. And now, ladies and gentlemen, to formally begin this valedictory session, we are honored to invite Shri Arpan Gupta, Director and Head Mines, Metals and Energy, FICCI, to deliver the welcome remarks. Let's put our hands together to welcome him.
Thank you so much, Shri Ghanshyam Prasad ji, Chairperson Central Electricity Authority, Shri Jishnu Barua ji, Chairperson CERC, dignitaries on the dais and off the dais, industry colleagues, friends from media, and participants. A very good afternoon to all of you. I am delighted to be here today among the government visionaries, industry leaders, and stakeholders who are driving the India's power sector to newer heights, ensuring energy security as well as accessibility to all, which is a long cherished vision of supplying 24/7 power to everyone. I extend my heartfelt congratulations to Central Electricity Authority on their Golden Jubilee celebrations, marking decades of contribution and significant contributions to India's power sector. I also applaud them for organizing this successful brainstorming conclave on Indian power sector scenario by 2047. Strong participation that we had for the last 2 days and also in this valedictory session reflects on the importance of the subject, especially in the ensuing period of India's Amrit Kal. As we stand today at a pivotal movement in India's energy journey, it is evident that the power sector is undergoing significant transformation. It is the key component for economic growth as well as human development, especially when we look at the emerging aspirations of this nation. The transformation of India's power sector in the last 10 years or the decade, as we can say, is a remarkable story of progress and resilience. The commitment of the government, coupled with participation from stakeholders, especially the generators and discoms, has propelled the nation towards a future powered by sustainable, affordable, and reliable energy. So, when we look at the three, four sides which are very important for the sector, on the supply side, if we look at today, almost every citizen of the country has access to grid electricity, while the power deficiency has decreased sharply. Today, we have become the power surplus nation from the power deficient one. As of August 2024, as we all know, our installed power capacity has crossed 450 gigawatt, with renewable energy contributing almost 45%. Parallelly, when we look at the demand side, the demand for electricity has also surged remarkably in the last few years, with projections indicating that the peak demand could reach almost 400 gigawatt by 2031 and 2032. Now, there are several factors which are contributing to this sharp increase in power consumption, which are like rising power per capita usage, industrial growth, urbanization, household demand, and extreme weather conditions, which are driving this demand, especially with the widespread usage of cooling appliances. The government has also responded very proactively with key interventions, including the commissioning of new thermal units, renewable energy, blending of imported coal to ensure supply, and measures to enhance the financial health of discoms. Moving on to the third, which is very important aspect of the sustainability front. Development of flexible sources such as pumped storage projects, battery technologies, and hydroelectricity will be key when we are talking about stabilizing the grid while integrating it with renewable energy. We have set a target of 500 gigawatt by 2030. While we are augmenting our capacities in the renewable energy, it is also equally important that we have the evacuation infrastructure, transmission infrastructure in place to synchronize with the capacity augmentation that we are doing. Also, equally important would be the distribution reforms aimed at improving financial viability and operational efficiency of the discoms. Power distribution is the most important link in the value chain of the ecosystem, as it is the last mile connectivity to all the consumers. The introduction of advanced metering infrastructure and amendments to tariff policies are all steps aimed at improving the robustness of distribution infrastructure and the network. Therefore, as we can say, as we have heard in the last 2 days, and as we are witnessing, the Indian power sector is undergoing a transition at multiple fronts in terms of supply, demand, grid connectivity, infrastructure augmentation, and energy transition. Therefore, we explored several key subjects in the last 1.5 days with focus on 10 sessions. We discussed the vital role of baseload plants in maintaining energy security, need for expanding hydropower and pump storage, and the importance of modernized transmission and distribution infrastructure. The discussions around grid resilience and energy storage were crucial in addressing the challenges posed by intermittent nature of the renewable energy. Equally important was the dialogue on policy and regulatory frameworks that we had to drive the innovation while ensuring stability within the sector. Also, the potential of green hydrogen was discussed to decarbonize the industries and transportation. We also delved into innovating financing models such as green bonds and public-private partnerships to bridge the financial gaps and accelerate clean energy projects. These takeaways, I am sure, will guide us in shaping more inclusive and forward-looking power sector in the country. Looking ahead, as the Indian power sector is poised for significant growth and modernization towards a renewable energy future, the power sector's success will depend on continued coordination among policymakers, investors, and consumers. FICCI, through its industry committees, has been at the forefront of working with the government by providing industry perspectives and policy inputs needed for a dynamic and forward-looking power sector. Once again, congratulations to Central Electricity Authority on their Golden Jubilee. Their work has been crucial in reforming the power sector, guiding us to Viksit and Atmanirbhar Bharat. I also take this opportunity to thank them for organizing this conclave to focus and identify the path forward for Indian power sector and providing FICCI an opportunity to join hands in this initiative. Also, a mention for Ministry of Power and the Ministry of Renewable Energy for supporting the initiative. Before I conclude, would like to thank the speakers for their valuable insights. We had an amazing audience for the 2 days with lots of enthusiasm. Mention for our partners, sponsors, knowledge partners, session organizers, and CBIP for jointly organizing this with us under the guidance and patronage of CEA. I also take the opportunity to mention our exhibitors for showcasing upcoming and innovative technologies in the sector. I'm confident that the discussions that at this conclave will bring forth actionable solutions to develop a robust ecosystem, promote R&D, ensure sustainable financing, and build capacity to meet the future power demand. Let's leave this conclave inspired and motivated, carrying the wisdom of knowledge we have gained in the last 2 days to our respective areas of work. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed, sir, for your words of welcome and also for all that encouragement that we had through your address. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we will take a moment to reflect on the highlights of the last 2 days with a capsule video that showcases the key moments of this event and the major discussions that have taken place and the ideas that have been shared by various leaders in the power sector. So let's sit back, relax, and enjoy the capsule video. We can see the Honorable Minister inaugurating the exhibition.
India has made remarkable strides in ensuring reliable and affordable electricity access for all cities. Our installed capacity has grown nearly 80% in the past decade, and we are among the top electricity producers globally.
2047 तक हमारी डिमांड जो है वो 708 गीगावाट ये बताई गई है, लेकिन वहीं हमने कैपेसिटी अपनी बढ़ानी होगी 3 टाइम्स यानी 2100 गीगावाट। अभी जो डबल है उसको ट्रिपल करना होगा।
extremely sorry for that technical glitch that we are having at the moment. And as you all can see how exciting the event was from this video that we presented before you.
है उसको ट्रिपल करना हो
And ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for that wonderful event that we had over the last 2 days and sadly coming to an end today with this valedictory session. And next we have our distinguished experts who will provide a summary of the key takeaways from the discussions during the event for their sessions. First, I would like to invite Sri Abhishek Kaustav, Director ENY, to present his session's gist. So let's put our hands together to welcome him.
A very good afternoon to all the dignitaries on the dais and off the dais. Thank you, Kancham sir. Thank you, Jishu sir, for uh, having your presence over on this valedictory session. So last 2 days have been there have been some of the path-breaking discussions around different areas which are very congruent and which are very important for the growth of our sector in India in times to come, and particularly till 2047. Uh, as a part of this valedictory session, what we have just prepared a small deck which essentially encompasses all the key takeaways for different areas, particularly on the role of base loads, the capacity planning for renewables till 2047, the requirements of skilling and the need for the HR incidences in order to stimulate the growth till 2047, and also the role of the smart and agile distribution utilities which would come up in order to support the growth of the power sector by 2047. So these are the four thematic areas I would like to cover out as a part of in a process to summarize the proceedings which had happened in the last 2 days. The sector is poised to grow by around 350% as per the data that has been analyzed by CA. The installed capacity is poised to grow by 357%, and so is the case of the energy requirement by 2047. The energy requirement per se is poised to grow by around 180%, over 180%, I would say. And this essentially is an estimate which has been provided uh, by CA as per the analysis done by them. And this is something very important to gauge through in order to understand what are the key drivers which are there in order to scale up of the in or so as to see this picture by the end of the 2047. So as per the readings, these three are the important pillars. These three are the important aspects which would stimulate the demand, which would catapult the installed capacity as well as the energy requirements by 2047. Particularly the increase in the peak energy and the demand requirements, which are likely to scale up by three times from the present level. The mandates under the global commitments, be it be the net zero commitments or the pledges under different COPs and the Panchamrit pledges that we have in order to abate upon the GHG emissions. And eventually, in order to scale up the demand, it is the connectivity that needs to be provided to all, if particularly in terms of electrification, in terms of the energy requirement, the energy access that needs to be provided out. So these three are important aspects which will drive up on the in the scaling of the capacities as well as the energy requirements by 2047. So how does CA looks into that by 2047? What should be the key aspects? Firstly, it would be since the thrust would be more in terms of uh, enhancing the renewable energy penetration. So the renewable energy integration would form the focus by 2047, and it will have a lion's share, as we all understand. And there would be a thrust also towards adoption of storage applications in order to ensure grid stability and also to ensure security for the grid. The next aspect, as we had discussed as we have already looked upon, is on the thrust towards enhancing and reaching out the of electrification to all. This would again, uh, this would be again a kind of an important aspect which needs to be underlined. 100% electrification for all citizens, as well as the providing the electrification solutions to all these citizens by 2047 is also an important aspect that needs to be covered. Uh, Considering the fact that this scaling of the scaling of energy requirements as well as vis-a-vis the installed capacities that we need to that we need to come up by 2047 requires a lot of churning of the knowledge as well as the sharing of the knowledge as well as adoption of international as well as best practices. So knowledge sharing is also one of the important pillars that would go as a part of in a sense to have a kind of a deeper penetration of energy transition by 2047. Knowledge sharing also accounts for an important position. Smart technologies, exploring the smart technologies is again one of the area which will again which would further enhance the energy requirements, which will also enhance pull up the demand requirements, and also would ensure that the performance of the grid is also to its best optimal manner. So this is again an important area that needs to be looked out, and in the upcoming slides we'll further deliberate over that. The next aspect is on the cybersecurity. Cybersecurity mechanisms, with the time to come, with the passage of the time, the cybersecurity mechanisms needs to evolve, and there has to be a kind of a cohesive regulatory framework around this in order to ensure that the cybersecurity is there. And uh, in order to have a kind of a resilient infrastructure, particularly the distribution infrastructure, we need to have this cybersecurity framework and the ecosystem in place. So moving on to the next slide, uh, we'll just cover upon some of the important aspects that we had discussed in the last 2 days as the part of uh, uh, our deliberations that went into it. First is the role of the base load in the energy transition and the energy security. So this is an important aspect where we understand that how we are placed now and going forward by 2047, how the picture would look like in terms of the capture of non-fossil fuel generation capacity, as well as the conventional fossil fuel generation capacity. Currently, it is pegged at around more than around 50%, and eventually it will slip down to something around by 11% by 2047, as per the assessment done. So the role of the baseload becomes very important, particularly in terms of with the high variable generation, with high influx of the renewable energy. The role of the baseload becomes very important. And there are two or three important aspects that needs to be covered in that, particularly from the thermal side. It has to be the renovation and modernization of the thermal units. That needs to be further work needs to be done on that regard. The policy framework has to be further enhanced in terms of resource adequacy measures coming into the picture and play. And the role of the hydropower, the expansion of the hydropower would be also important in order to provide the flexible services. So, taking cue from this, what we understand, and based on the deliberations that happened during the session, we understand that this is how the scenario would look like. As we have already discussed, the RNM of thermal plants would be very important, would ensure, since the thermal plants would be not only would the role of the thermal plants going forward would be more of providing flexible solutions rather than going for a base load solutions. So this is something that needs to be looked out. The role of the nuclear as well as the gas power plants for providing flexible services would be also important. Considering the regulatory and the supply chain challenges which we have, that also needs to be weeded out, particularly from there has to be a certainty and the stability on the regulatory solutions, which will entice more investment from the power sector to come in from the power sector. And also there has to be a kind of a firm solution on providing the linkage of coal to different thermal power plants, in order so that their the flexible solutions could be essentially provided. The transmission infrastructure development is also one of the thrust areas which was discussed and deliberated. And we had seen the issues around what are basically the current set of issues that transmissions in the transmission space, and going forward how it should look like. So particularly in terms of improving the transmission connectivity, in ensuring the grid resilience. So these are some of the important focus areas that needs to be taken care of. Moving on to the next slide, particularly on how the capacity building of the workforce of the manpower that would be engaged in order to meet up the requirements till 2047. So there are certain areas that we understand that needs to be covered, and there has to be a kind of an objective solution around that. So we understand that there are three areas where the knowledge sharing as well as the capacity building of the professionals should be focused out. Firstly, the skill gap analysis needs to be and should be further enhanced across the power sector value chain, where the areas that needs to be identified, the challenges particularly the manpower across the power sector is there, those shortcomings needs to be sorted out. There has to be a national uh, occupation standards that needs to be formulated out, which will essentially give a fillip to, and that would help provide a kind of a certification solution to all the power that is being engaged in the power sector, and a collaboration, as we have deliberated in length also during our sessions, during our yesterday's session, that the collaboration between the industry and the academia is of significance, is of paramount importance in order to have a right set of workforce to cater to the requirements of our sector by 2047. Some of the important takeaways from the session which were highlighted were that specific trainings, particularly to the catering to the industry requirements, needs to be formulated. Adaptability of information security is also one of the important area that needs to be looked into. The skill gap assessment that we had discussed, which essentially would help in mapping out the areas, the lacunas that is there in the workforce, and proper skilling, and the areas that needs to be for the areas which needs to be skilled up for for the working professionals needs to be figured out, and training on the emerging technologies needs to be finalized, particularly on the upcoming technologies, which would be the future of energies, that needs to be figured out. So these are some of the important takeaways from the session which was there on the capacity building and human resources. Moving on to the next slide, which essentially talks on the capacity planning. Uh, the session, in fact the last session of the year of yesterday, which was on capacity planning for renewable energy by 2047. And as we have deliberated, as we have seen in my in the previous slides, that the renewable would be occupying the lion's share of the installed capacity by 2047. So this is how the forecast of the renewable energy would be by 2047. This is based upon the analysis and the data inputs provided by the CA, and this is how the picture would look like. An estimate suggests that by 2047, close to around 2000 gigawatt of installed capacity would be there. But this is from more from the in order to have this amount of capacity in place, so what are the areas that needs to be looked out? What are the possible solutions? How this scaling of the capacity needs to be done? So this is something that needs to be looked into. So some of the important areas and the interventions that we have thought of, that probably, and which was essentially deliberated also in the yesterday's discussion, was formulating upon the enabling policy and regulatory measures. We have the Electricity Amendment Bill of 2020-2022, and there are some enabling measures under for the RE development, which again needs to be finalized and adopted. There are other regulatory measures, particularly on strengthening of the intrastate open access regime, ensuring that the grid stability and the grid discipline is there owing to the store. So there has to be a kind of a promotion of storage applications, incentivization on adoption of storage applications. An important aspect is also about around the creation of the manufacturing hub for RE in order to support the growth that has been estimated by 2047. So we have the PLI scheme as of now for modules. We have yours for cells. Going forward, there are PLI on other attributes of the or across the other value chain parameters of the RE technology needs to be formulated. Financing was also one of the important area which we discussed. That going forward, around 300 lakh crore of financing would be required, has been estimated by 2047. So, in order to have these investments coming into the picture, and in order to have these financing done, so the more credible projects credible as well as the bankable techno-commercial due diligence of RE projects, of the RE proposals has to be conducted out, so that the assets don't become a kind of a sunk cost. And the most important, the other important aspect that was deliberated during the discussion was on the weeding of the impediments of RE growth, particularly around creation of evacuation infrastructure on the transmission side, and also towards maintaining a kind of in order to have a kind of a proper uh, a framework in so as to have a one-stop solution for all the land approvals and land conversion issues that commonly the RE developers face. So these were some of the important thematic areas that we had covered, and kind of a solutions oriented thoughts that we discussed during our sessions on this capacity planning for renewable by 2047. Last but not the least, some of the important, the another area which we discussed was also on the smart distribution. Yes, as we all understand that the distribution system is also going to play an important role The role of the cannot be negated. The paramount importance of having a technology-oriented solutions for distribution sector is of real significance. So this is the common pathway that we have decided upon, that was essentially discussed during yesterday's session, where today's session, in fact, where we finalized that in the wake of large RE penetration, how the distribution segment would look like. So these were the pathways that how we can transform from the current shape to the smart distribution system. So this is the pathway that we had discussed around, and the intervention regarding IoTs and the particularly the smart meters. The role of IoTs and the smart meters would hold a lot of would have significant contribution. Some of the important takeaways which came up during the discussion was around more emphasis on the smart metering and grid digitalization. We have these schemes like RDSS and all in place, but further the speed, the enhancement and the penetration of all these schemes needs to be enhanced. Consumer participation and decentralization, since the focus over the time would be more towards adoption of decentralized applications, and the consumers would be turning more into prosumers, where they would be producing as well as the consumers. So the adoption of peer-to-peer trading and scenarios regarding new business models which would be emerging for adoption of decentralized applications. So the distribution system needs to be ready in order to have the high influx of such solutions coming into place. On the policy and regulatory framework support, one of the important aspect was in order to ensure that the maintenance of these infrastructure, particularly the hotline maintenance, and also there has to be a kind of a cohesive policy framework and regulatory framework around this. Additionally, on the capacity building front, since the transition would be more from the conventional to adoption of smart technologies in the distribution segment. So there has to be a kind of a capacity building of the DISCOM officials, of the utilities, who would be more who would be in a position, and once they have who would be in a position to have a kind of who would be more inclined to take up these would prepare themselves and who would be geared to take up these smart solutions over the passage of the time. So again, these were some of the focus areas that were discussed throughout the sessions, and I would say, and I would congratulate CA for holding some wonderful and exciting sessions around the CA. So with this, thank you for your patience and hearing me out. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir, for your insightful session summary and for highlighting the key themes for the discussions. And ladies and gentlemen, before we move ahead, we present before you a short video message by Shri Sumant Sinha, Founder, Chairman and CEO, Renew.
As the Central Electricity Authority marks its golden jubilee, we must celebrate its transformative impact on India's power sector. Over the past 50 years, the CA has been a driving force in advancing India's energy policies, infrastructure, and standards, powering India's progress and securing a brighter, more sustainable future for all. On the road to 2047, with a focus on its Panch Amrit targets, India needs to implement a multifaceted strategy encompassing several elements. Substantial investment in setting up and upgrading its energy infrastructure, strengthening R&D and advancing technologies, including developing efficient energy storage solutions, and upgrading grid management systems and transmission lines will be absolutely imperative. Streamlining regulatory frameworks and incentivizing private sector investment will drive faster adoption of clean energy. Additionally, focusing on energy efficiency measures across industries and households, coupled with skill development programs, will ensure a sustainable and self-reliant energy ecosystem. As one of the largest nationally interconnected grids in the world today, with substantial growth in electricity generation from renewable energy sources in the years to come, India offers valuable learnings for countries across the world to imbibe. International cooperation in the power sector holds significant opportunities. By working together, countries can overcome technical, financial, and policy barriers, enabling a more coordinated and effective shift towards clean energy globally. On the journey to a Viksit Bharat 2047, the CEA will continue to play an integral role with its unwavering commitment to enhancing grid reliability, fostering sustainable practices, and advancing technological innovations in meeting the nation's growing electricity needs. My congratulations to Mr. Ghanshyam Prasad and the entire CEA team on this historic milestone.
We thank Mr. Sumant Sinha for his best wishes and the wonderful address that he has sent. So, ladies and gentlemen, now we will have industry interaction on the first just presented about the sessions. And I would request Chairperson CA, Shri Ghanshyam Prasad ji, to kindly lead the discussions. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon. Earlier, we thought that we'll present for all 10 sessions and then go for the interactions. I think it will be better if the presenter, because ENY had moderated 4 sessions and they had presented before you the findings of those sessions. We would like to have the views of the audience. If you would like to interact on any of these points, please feel free to interact. And I think Kaustubh will be able to give you further feedbacks on what deliberations had happened, or we'll take your suggestions on these points. So these 4 sessions are now open for discussion. I think you can help them with the mics. Yeah, I think there's gentlemen.
We will be getting the microphones to you, sir. Kindly raise your hand. And we would also request you to identify yourself with your name and the organization. Can we have the microphones, please? So, meanwhile, if you could step forward and put across your question while we're getting the microphone to you.
Sir, I'm Rajesh Wadhwa. My company is Stride and Strides OPC Private Limited. I'm not from the power sector, but I would like to know only one thing, sir. I came to know in this discussions that PFC was already offering a lot of financial solutions, including to RE sector. So what was the need for IREDA to come up and it became public only recently? So is the demand so much, or is it that you just didn't want only one person in the financing field? Thank you.
I think I had given in my own remark in the inaugural itself that the amount of finance that is required is tremendous and huge. We need multiple financing companies to come forward and try to do it. And if you, the moment you multiply financing companies who are ready to come in this particular business, then probably that there will be competition as well. So idea here is to have multiple financing companies, even domestic as well as trying to take care of the international finances as well.
Yeah. Hello. I'm Rajiv Agrawal. I'm Secretary General for Indian Captive Power Producers Association. It's not a question, just some observation. We started with like base load and transition of energy market and then even cross border. Now, when we are talking of base load, before that we talk of what is the fuel used, that's coal. Unfortunately, across the ministries, nothing to do with this particular conference, we don't discuss coal, and in coal we don't discuss power. That's a big disconnect. There is a general feeling that though coal ministry is not represented here, but I am still taking liberty to make a comment. They are working more like Ministry of CIL. And in case of Ministry of Power, we look forward for support to captive power, which is very crucial, but somewhere things get let down. Now here, what is happening is that there are a lot of skews happening in the whole system, which is due to cross subsidization. Like CPPs are being treated as a non-power producers by coal ministry, and we are providing cross subsidy to IPPs. How we can have a even electricity market? I'll not discuss that we are moving towards oligopolies and coal. So I'm not discussing that. Then there are a lot of government historical inefficiencies, right from Coal India to the type of wages which are paid or which are available to the private sector. So there is a huge big disconnect, which is also creating a lot of issues. And then another is that we are third or fourth largest economy globally. That is on PPP basis. But nowhere, either in coal ministry or in power ministries, we are actually discussing what is PPP status. According to my calculation, it's almost 5 to 8 times costlier, power as well as coal. Now, how we can have affordability? And since there is no affordability, there cannot be sustainable demand. And hence, whatever we are discussing is highly underrated. Thank you.
Sorry, I could not catch your last word. You said highly
Underrated.
underrated. Okay. Very valid point. I think probably you're from captive, right? You deal with captive. So I can understand the pain point of captive. In fact, we had been trying to resolve the issues, and I think very soon you will hear the change in the policy, particularly with respect to the coal allocations. Remember, thermal is here, and we have been working very closely with Ministry of Coal to see that the policy gets slightly eased out, and we are able to have almost good amount of parity to the extent possible. I'll not say that it will be exactly same as the others, but at least we are trying to simplify the present Shakti policy in which the coal is being allocated to the power plants, various power plants. And we'll try to see that the IPP also gets the good share of those allocations. So this is in the offings, and very soon we are going to the cabinet on that policy, and once it is approved, it will be thrown open. Maybe that will be one step closer to your expectations, but may not really fulfill that. That could happen if I perceive that we have the commercial mining in place, which is again going to be a reality, maybe not today, but maybe after 2 years, 3 years or so. And the manner in which Ministry of Coal is also working for going for some kind of a market for coal, just like what we have exchanges in the power side. So similarly, they are also thinking of that kind of a construct. So probably then there will be a good amount of opportunity where anybody and everybody can go there in case he feels short of coal, and they can go purchase and get the things done. Third thing that is happening here is the captive coal mines, and every year we are trying to target that we have more coal production from the captive mines, so that our dependence on the CIL, which alone used to rule the game, probably gets diluted to a larger extent. So we are having three-prong approach. One is simplification of the Shakti policy. Second is enhance coal production in other segment other than the CIL. CIL itself is enhancing their production to try to take care of the enhanced demand of power sector. But other than that, captive blocks which have been allocated to the power plants, they also enhance their production, and the commercial minings. So these are the things which is happening in this particular segment. And I see, since not much of the plants will be coming and getting added up in near future, and if the pace at which the growth is happening in the coal segment, probably very soon we will catch up and we'll try to attain that level wherein self-sufficiency is attained. This year, you must have seen that the coal supply had been quite sufficient, and none of our power plants suffered because of supply of coal, what we faced around 2 years back. So slowly and slowly, we are trying to catch up to that kind of a situation. There's no disconnect. I'll not say in the government that we are disconnected. I mean, even though it is not represented here. Ministry of Coal is not represented here. But we do interact with Ministry of Coal, Ministry of Railways on a weekly basis. There is a subgroup at the level of joint secretaries. They meet, discuss the issues of power sector and try to resolve it on a weekly basis. And if it doesn't get resolved at that level, then there is a committee of secretaries of Secretary Power, Coal, and Railways. All three of them sit together and try to resolve the issues. Even if it doesn't happen at that place, then all the three ministers sit together and try to resolve these issues. So we do have a mechanism of getting into the solutions, and that is how you must have seen some kind of a reform which have eased out the situation, particularly for the power sector. And we'll do some more as we go along. Thank you. Thank you for your feedback.
Sir, my name is Sailesh Modi. My name is Sailesh Modi. I am from ERDA. Sir, my question is on the distribution side. Presently, the non-linear loads are increasing from the consumer side. So these type of loads are responsible for polluting the systems, generating lot of power quality issues. So as far as the future distribution system is concerned, so will there be any challenge to accommodate that non-linear kind of loads?
So are you from distribution company?
I am from ERDA, sir, Electrical
Acha,
Research and
okay.
Development
You are from
Association.
TERI. So I think Ramesh Sinha ji will be able to right person to speak on distribution.
So what you have said is correct because lot of inductive loads have come, LED bulbs and rooftop solar. So now the power quality measurement is something which CA has brought about, not only at the distribution level, but even at the transmission level. And for that, whatever capacitors you need to put or statcoms you need to put. Similarly, now battery is one of the solutions which is there. So I think earlier this was not being measured and monitored. Now that this has started, I'm sure a lot of those solutions will come. You would have heard that the ministry is now proposing that with all the solar plants and wind plants, there will be a certain capacity of storage capacity that will come. So I do expect that many of these solutions, as we keep on improving the network and the quality of service and quality of supply, they will get addressed.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, sir. I am Arul Jodi, representing NLC India Limited, Tamil Nadu. I come to understand from this conclave that around 2,83,000 megawatt of thermal power generation will be proposed by 2030. In my calculation, it comes around adding up of 500 million tons of CO2 to the atmosphere. So is it not possible to promote floating solar equipped with a pumped storage system so that it will reduce or mitigate this carbonization awards, because we are totally in the decarbonization era. This is my humble submission. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, very true. But the pace at which the demand is growing and the visibility that we have and the capability with which we can add the other resources is, again, we'll have to explore all the possible pathways to attain and try to see that we are able to meet the demand. And that is how you must have seen around 3 back, we used to say that no more coal in the country. But the way the demand picked up during last 2 years, and when we touched 10%, 11%, 12%, and some months it was even 23%. So we had no option but to have a rethinking and try to expeditiously add some more resources so that at least we don't fall short of the demand. So that is how all approaches are happening. It's not that the floating solar is not happening. It is happening. We have already tried to assess the potentials. Even in some of the reservoirs, we are trying to put it. So that all the paths we have opened it, and you must have seen now that we are trying to exploit as much possible the wind side, solar side, hydro pump storage, hydro, then battery energy storage system as well. But the cost economics at present scenario, we have tried to see what can be the optimal solution, because we cannot make the cost of power exorbitantly high at this point of time. So we are cautiously approaching all the places so that at least we achieve optimal solutions. But you rightly said that it might add to CO2 emissions as such. So, and for that, we are trying to flex these coal-based power plants and trying to see that when solar is available to me, I use solar maximum and flex these coal-based power plants to 55% and then going even as low as 40%. So that way we will be reducing the coal consumption in even these power plants as well. I think Mr. Sinha wants to speak. Can somebody give a mic, Mr. Verma?
This is V.S. Verma. I'm a former member of CA and CRC. My question relates to the capacity addition of the renewables. Lot has been discussed about this 500 gigawatt power by 2030. One question is that the 125 gigawatt required for hydrogen generation, is it inclusive of this one? Number one. Number two, our present installed capacity of the renewable is about 200 gigawatt, and achieving 500 gigawatt would require at least 50 gigawatt per year. The present capacity is only around hovering to around 20 gigawatt per year. What steps are being conceived by us to enhance this capacity to more than double, actually, to achieve this 500 gigawatt? Otherwise, it remains as a optimistic target.
So there had been some slow progress in particularly addition of solar and wind during last 2 to 3 years for the reasons which is well known to us. It all were the external factors which were affecting it. But of late, the pipeline that we have, as per the figures that has been given to us from Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, they have something like 110 gigawatt in the pipeline, which have already been bidded out and they are under construction. And commensurating to that number, we also have the transmission line also, which is getting constructed. Transmission line worth around 140 gigawatt is under construction, so that both of them will match in the similar time frame. So these capacity are likely to fructify in next 2 years. Means even if we discount 24, 25, so we'll be reaching them by 27. At least these capacities are likely to be there. They also have a trajectory of bid out as well, and they are trying to bid out 50 gigawatt almost every year, so that by 27 we are able to bid out all the capacity relating to 500 gigawatt, so that it fructifies by 500 gigawatt by 2030. So that's a strategy which has been adopted by MNRE, and I don't see much of a challenge, because the transmission line almost we are there. We are just falling short of around 110 gigawatt as of now, which is out of this 500 gigawatt, which we will be taking up for approval under the NCT and then going for its implementation. In maximum in next year, will be going. There are only one challenge that is coming in the transmission side, that is on the HVDC, where the supply chains are slightly delayed. Other than that, I don't see much of a challenge in achieving these numbers.
Rajesh Hura from DTL. And I feel, first of all, congratulations to CA for Silver Jubilee celebration, and you have already done a good job. And there is no doubt about it, Golden Jubilee. And there are three concerns. What I feel, one concern is about the quality, because when we talk about 500 gigawatts, the reactive power is not compensated by inverter associated with solar is one concern, and we still depends on our distribution company to give reactive power compensation. And the second concern, what I feel, is safety, because we have to take care of the safety. All regulations are in place, but implementation of all regulations is big challenge. And the third is the failure of assets. And what I feel, we have to work together to improve the quality, failure of assets, and ensure safety, because we are losing 15,000 lives in a year. It's a big number. We have to come together, we have to work together to reduce that number, we have to work together to reduce the failure of equipments, and finally we have to improve the quality so that the quality of distribution system, because the reactive power compensation to be done by inverters, that is the main concern from my side.
You're from DTL, right? If I have it correctly.
I am from DTL.
Delhi Transco Limited.
Yes.
Oh, good. Thank you. Sir, I missed one before I go to his question. That is, it's good that what I addressed your point is from the supply side of it. That means the generator side, it will be coming. The other thing that we have done as a part of CA is we have made the resource adequacy plan for all the DESCOMs, wherein we have identified them that what is your requirement to purchase. So addressing supply side issues and then the demand side issues. And these people, they will be going, these discoms are mandated now to go to the regulatory commission and try to get these plans approved so that they will have to mandatorily tie up these capacities in a given year. And this plan have been made to also see that it matches with the 500 gigawatt requirement. So this takes care of the RPO which we have given to them, and these RPO, if they are able to meet, then we'll be able to achieve. So taking care from the supply side as well as from the demand side, probably both of them will try to match.
Is it audible?
You can give the
Sir?
mic. Sir, meanwhile, can I answer?
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah, I think he wants to complete. I think can somebody give a mic here?
What I understand that these DISCOMs are approaching to tie up this the generation capacity, but the availability of the generation capacity remains a question. And wherever they tie up, and when they monitor that the projects are coming up or not, there is a degree of failure on the part of the availability question, and therefore there has to be a strict monitoring of this of this capacity which they want to tie up on the part of either CA or Ministry or Regulatory Commission somewhere.
Yeah, that is what I tried to mention, sir. Earlier, it was only the ministry and CA they were doing it, but without any mandate. So now that mandate part is now coming through the rules and the regulatory commission framework. So, and the moment they go for ERA, they will have to demonstrate that whatever RA plan is there, whether you have adhered to it or you have not.
So there's, I think you have to answer one question there, but if I could pose mine before you,
sir,
since I'm sitting next to him. I'm Razdan, your old secretary. Having worked in both sectors, power and petroleum, I find, you see, that when we are going to move to electric vehicles, as we are saying, and also probably hydrogen powered vehicles, who knows in the future, that transition and that interplay between the hydrocarbon sector and yours for that transition, have you or people like Anish worked on it? That when is this transition to EVs going to come about? And what is going to be the load and the time frame?
So,
and the impact on what we are planning to do. Because honestly speaking, I don't find enough infrastructure for EV charging around, number one. Number two, when this transition comes about, giving our kind of traffic congestion that we have, for example, it's taking about 2 hours to travel from Gurgaon to Aerocity today. What is the position for EV charging stations and facilities and, I mean, handling this transition with a
Anish,
greater prosperity, greater congestion, and greater consumption of electricity?
Sir. I think Anish, let
I
him.
think the point is very valid, that it's very difficult to time the transition. I just want to take a couple of things from a decarbonization standpoint. The principle is that whatever you can electrify, please electrify. That's the best path to decarbonization anywhere in the world. So there will be a pressure on electrification. In terms of EVs specifically, we were in this panel this morning where the MD of Nepal Electricity Authority, Mr. Gising, mentioned that new sales in Nepal, 70% of the new sales are EV sales. And this is not something they'd expected. So it's just addresses the point that when it happens very quickly. Now, how the electricity infrastructure has coped, it's a combination of home charging, and I'm sure you have perspectives on that. It's a combination of home charging and highway charging or external charging. That's one thing we have to look at. It's not just about the space, but also the infrastructure hardening at the distribution levels to when there's a lot of EVs which come in, which has to be kept in mind. So that's important, but the transition can happen in various places very quickly. Uh, it is also important to have the right kind of standards in place very quickly because we will otherwise have a mishmash of charging infrastructure which will not work. So you might have the infrastructure, but not the right kind of compatible infrastructure. So I think that standards is an issue on which India, being one of the biggest demand centers of any kind of energy services in the world, has to work much more actively. We have seen that China do that. We have not done that in India, and I think that's something possibly CEA to take forward in these areas. As far as hydrogen is concerned, I think green hydrogen-based transport for passenger mobility is a very long distance away. What will happen is highway transport, trucking transport based on hydrogen. That is a possibility, and when that happens, the passenger transporter will have to piggyback on that. As per as current economics, on a standalone basis, passenger transport based on or four-wheeler transport based on hydrogen is just not feasible.
I agree with you, Anish, there. In fact, I think where we are faltering also is on the highway, planning the highways for the future. Because almost, I take you back almost 8-10 years ago when we were probably interacting like this in a session. And my feeling was that you will have to create, like the old electric tramways, along the national highways, these electrified corridors for long distance transport, particularly, which must move non-stop and can move almost like locomotives on the track for long distances. So that kind of integrated planning and thinking and execution at the same time, because you need space. There's no space today left in our country. I worked in urban development. I also worked on roads and PWD. There is no passage that is left for this kind of infrastructure. What solution we are trying to give is every year build a flyover, build a flyover. We couldn't have made a bigger mess than we have made at the Indira Gandhi International Airport. And now we can't go higher there because it's a landing strip. So we'll have to go underground like rodents, probably. But we need to do, I think, far more thinking well in advance. And it's people like you who've got to make us aware of all this that is needed and what we are not doing. Because you talked about EVs. My feeling is that that EV bulge essentially in our country is only two-wheeler by and large. Because you don't need a license, you don't need a helmet, no policeman will catch you because he cannot extract anything out of you.
Sir, I think you rightly said about it. There is, in fact, very valid point that you have raised, and that's going to be one of the key areas of demand in electricity that will be coming up through the EVs part. But right now, the visibility that we have is only through the either the Niti Aayog or from the Ministry of Road Transport, as far as the input to the power sector is concerned. And whatever is their roadmap, that we take it and try to inbuilt into the our demand factor, and then we try to do it. So that's the present mechanism. But probably what you rightly said is there has to be a good harmonization of thinking and coordinated planning is required in this particular space so that we take it forward. Coming back to DTL question, I think what you said is very right, but then I'll only say that transcos also need to do their own bit, and which I am at least aware that DTL, Delhi Transco, I think you have not done even your capex for last 5 to 6 years. During the last 5 to 6 years, probably you need to enhance your own capability. You can't pass on the bugs to the distribution utility and say that the entire reactive compensation has to come from the distribution side. It has to be done at each and every step. The standards, the regulations are very clear who is to do what, and that is how the planning is to be done by the Transco themselves. You have to do your bit. Distribution companies will also have to do their bit so that the quality of power is maintained to the ultimate consumers. So with that question, I think we'll rest here on the 4 sessions. Maybe we'll come back after the next presenter gives their findings on the next 3 to 4 sessions, and then we'll again come back to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for interacting.
Thank you very much indeed. So, ladies and gentlemen, before I invite for the next session gist, we would like to play a short video message by Dr. Prateek Sharma, Vice Chancellor, Delhi Technological University, DTU.
I'm very happy to know that the Central Electricity Authority is celebrating its Golden Jubilee year, and for which I want to compliment the entire team of Central Electricity Authority. CEA has been playing a pivotal role in the area of power sector, and especially in the context of what the Honorable Prime Minister has mentioned in his Glasgow address related to Panchamrit, which is related to energy transition especially. And I'm very happy to say with a lot of pride and satisfaction that DTU has already signed an MOU with CEA in establishing a nodal center for energy transition at DTU. We do hope that with the establishment of centers like what we have established at DTU with the support of CEA and with a lot of initiatives taken by the academic institutions in, I would say, knowledge creation, and by identifying the gaps that existed related to energy transition, this process will certainly hasten up. And academic institutions have a very important role to play in this, in undertaking cutting edge research and contributing to the knowledge gap that exists, and helping the government bodies like CEA and relevant ministries in attainment of what we call as energy sovereignty of the nation is concerned. Apart from the capacity building, it's very important that there is a flow of information and knowledge, and there is a inter-institutional collaboration, not even within the country, but also across the globe. With the renewable energy sources, which are identified as the major contributors, which will add to the overall pie chart of the energy production in the country, how those renewable energy sources would be integrated with the overall grid. So I take this opportunity to compliment the entire CEA team, and also giving me an opportunity to share my thoughts.
Thank you. I would now like to invite Shri Anish Dey, partner at KPMG, to present the gist of the sessions of KPMG. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of you. Thank you, CEA, for these engaging 2 days. It has been really a brainstorming exercise. I know there are lots of sessions, lots to carry back, but there's also lots to do, as various in the previous interactions we were hearing. There's a lot more to do to take this forward. So, wishing CEA the best for that as well. Now, in terms of the sessions which I am going to talk about, if I can have the presentation, please. So the first session which I happened to moderate was on financing the energy transition in India. And there was a question raised about, just a little while back about whether we need how many NBFCs or development financial institutions, Indian financial institutions do we need? We just need to understand the amount amounts which we are talking about, at the minimum, and I say at the minimum because I know that when you add certain elements like transmission and storage, these are going to be conservative estimates. But at the minimum, we are going to require 50 lakh crores of investments by 2032, FY32, and 200 lakh crores by 2047. As it says, it's a preliminary estimate. And the reason, I mean, just translate this into US dollars, it's about $80 billion per year, or $80 billion by 2032. And that is not a small sum of money. Sorry, $600 billion, which translates to about $80 billion per year. It's not a small sum of money. So yesterday when we had the session on financing, it came out that at this rate, for financing this amount of capital, it's not that we don't have the access to the capital, but we'll have two things. One is that the cost of capital is going to be very, very important. And the second thing is that the institutions like PFC, REC, IREDA is going to have to play a disproportionate role in that, because we are looking at a big jumpstart in the amount of funding which is required, financing which is required for this. There are challenges in financing. There are, the upfront capital costs. There's limited access to long-term, low-cost finance, which I mentioned about. The project appraisal capability as well as project development capabilities need to become much stronger, because these are much more complex now. We are talking about batteries, we are talking about green hydrogen, we are talking about flexibility devices and transmission of various kinds to come in. Equipment is getting more and more difficult in terms of specs. So all of that to make sure that they're future ready requires a lot of project preparation capability as well as appraisal capability, which is a problem. The other part of the problem is the time. We don't have time. If we have to grow at the rate which we are growing, then it's going to be a lot more faster than what we have done before. So that detailing and the haste don't necessarily go very well hand in hand. Various stakeholders, such as including Government of India, have helped the process. The late payment surcharge has been talked about in various places as a means for discipline in the sector, and that helps financing. But there might be more needed as we go forward. The role of the private sector has been muted thus far. It's been largely a government-driven sector. But as we go more towards renewables, that's transforming. So the role of the private sector, both in project development as well as funding, is going to be pretty important. And then there are a whole range of measures. I'm going to skip and come straight down to what the summary takeaways of the sessions were. The first thing was that the general consensus is that availability of finance, the quantum of finance, despite being more than double of what we are doing today, is not a challenge, but the cost of finances. And we need to find mechanisms for reducing the cost of finance, especially for new technologies where the risk premium goes up. So there might be some need for VGF and other kinds of policy support. The green bond market, which doesn't give any advantage to the borrower, now needs to find ways. We need to find ways to make the green bond market much more attractive. They are these critical measures, and there's a lot of work to be done for those aspects. The risks in the sector are going to increase. They're already high, but today you don't have vanilla projects. I mean, earlier, if you ask a renewable energy developer, they would be happy to do a wind project, a solar project, and that's it. Today, we are talking of hybrid projects. We are talking of FDRE projects. We are going to have much more batteries coming in. The technologies are changing. So there is a significant amount of risk, including technology risk, financing risk, of various kinds, which you also financing, which have to be dealt with. And the key amongst them is the sustainability, financial sustainability of the distribution sector. Much has been talked about it, so I'm not going to talk about it. But we just have to remember that finally, the money comes through the utilities, from the customers through the utilities. So that sector has to be viable. Otherwise, we will have a viability challenge in the sector. Multilateral development banks have a key role. After COP28, there's a lot of pressure on them to reform. They are doing so, but they have to become more nimble because given the time scales that we don't have the appraisal processes which typically go on for a year and a half sometimes, just no time for that. So that has to become much better. But what we need to learn from the multilateral development banks is the rigorous project preparation which is required. Because if you don't do that, sooner than later you'll find environmental risks, social risks coming onto your projects which you have not been ready for, and financing will become difficult, or there will be more challenges, more risk premiums to be paid. So that is important to learn from them as well as reform them. India has a key role to play in reforming the MDBs. These are all ecosystem plays, and you are going to hear this again and again. And we talked about this in the interactions a little while ago, that there are lots of infrastructure to come in, policies to be behind, regulations to be harmonized, there's capacity to be created, there's awareness to be created. This is all needed for capital mobilization. If you don't have those, then you will not have the kind of scale of finance coming in at the time and at the cost which you need. So this ecosystem plays need to be understood. And the financing has to become much more nuanced. So what is the risk in a under construction project or under development project is a very different set of risks from something which is operational. You need different kinds of capital to come for those different projects. So in the market, the kind of capital which comes in for these need to be much more nuanced. So for long-term projects, once they're constructed, pension funds can come in. But during the construction phase, the risks are quite different. So different kinds of financing need to come in. We are already doing some of this. Asset flipping is happening. Monetization is happening. We just need to happen this much more faster and much more in a much more sophisticated way. Going to the next session, which I had again the privilege of moderating. This was on modern, resilient, and future-ready transmission systems by 2047. And some of it has already been talked about. The big part, of course, is the growth which we require. And I don't have this over here, but some of the presenters are showing the kind of networks of the future, where we are to where we have to go, the AC links, DC links, and it's like the whole of India getting covered with all kinds of links. So that's not going to be easy for not just so much for the capital, but for the technology access. The HVDC, Chairman CA talked about HVDC being a critical constraint, and that's something which we, given our expansion needs, have to be very conscious about. Things like the one sun, one world, one grid coming in is going to cause even further demand and even further nuances. So I think this is going to be an interesting thing. Grid modernization is important because you have a range of technologies which you are talking about, which are required for flexibilization, modernization, control, visibility, which will then allow us the physical resilience and operation resilience. And also, as we saw earlier, cybersecurity resilience, because in the presentations, it came out very clearly that if somebody wants to do damage to us, it's very easy. So we need to be up on our guard and find the institutional means for dealing with them. So summarizing some of those takeaways over there, regulations and standards need to be future ready. We were talking about the inverter characteristics, the kind of new kinds of inductive loads which are coming in. So the standards need to be upgraded. The group characteristics need to now not only be a discretionary thing, they have to come into the standards very, very quickly, along with the various kinds of state-of-the-art technologies being reflected in the specifications and standards. Transmission planning needs to factor in energy storage, reactive power planning, resiliency aspects, new technologies. So it's not just about hydrogen. Actually, you don't, since you know the future networks, the future kind of demand, the future kind of technologies, and transmission, which kind of connects everything up, will have to be much more dynamic. The planning of transmission will have to be much more dynamic, much more integrated. Resource adequacy will be a key. It's been discussed in multiple sessions, and Chairman CA pointed about that. It is something we need to find new ways of ensuring that resource adequacy is met. Otherwise, there is going to be a challenge as the system becomes more renewable heavy. Also, we need to be careful about when we have 80% of the capacity coming from renewables, what happens if there's a cloud cover. We heard about the fact that in Rajasthan, we lost 8 gigawatts in a matter of minutes when there was a large cloud cover which came in. And as a consequence, the planning needs to be long-term planning, medium-term planning, short-term planning or short-term forecasting, intraday forecasting, that whole web of planning and forecasting needs to come together quite quickly. The fourth point was on indigenization, and this is totally in line with the objective of Viksit Bharat, but also for our own security as such, energy security as well. Whether it's the whole systems or components, there has to be a plan for indigenous development and manufacturing, including technology development. And for that, we need to give market visibility. So one of the key demands which was coming from the industry is, we know there's a market, but give us the visibility, give us the mechanisms for allowing us to plan in advance. And I think that will be a common thought which others would also have. Cybersecurity, I've already spoken about. It is crazy, and the example came from what happened in Lebanon with the pagers. Somebody gave that example of the coordinated blasting of the pagers. How critical cybersecurity is, including in the supply chain, and we have to be super careful about it. And the biggest thing is to have the right kind of standards, right kind of testing, to make sure that and incident response, so that we are secure, because we are really vulnerable there. Very quickly, onto the last session, which I moderated this morning, cross-border energy trade and energy markets. This is a combination of themes which work together. There is energy trade which has gone up quite significantly in recent times. So we are almost at about 15% of our overall energy coming from energy trading, including through short-term markets as well as the spot markets and other platform traded mechanisms. Is it good? Of course it is. Is it adequate? It is no. The answer is no. Because the amount of flexibility which we need in the system, we cannot have through long-term inflexible contracts. We need short-term markets of various kinds to provide, but the markets need to become much more sophisticated. Today, we have made good progress, but the products on the market need to be much more nuanced, be it physical products, capacity products, ancillary services products, financial products. All of these need to come. And a fundamental thing for that is to, of course, to have the infrastructure to support, because markets do not like a system when a trade cannot be completed. If you have a trade, it must be completed for reliability of the market. And hence, it is very important to build the infrastructure. That is what was coming out from the panel discussion. But one thing before that, the cross-border trade is improving, but it's only 1% of the energy traded overall. And the potential is huge. We often think on national lines, including in India, we think on national lines. But if we are overthinking on national lines, then we end up compromising our own interests along with the interest of the neighbors. So there is a need for being a little more expansive in our thinking, rather than, what happens, the whataboutery of what happens kind of thing has to go down a little bit. We need to find contingency mechanisms. There will be some things where we will be taking a risk. But if we are not taking a risk and leaving at 1%, 2%, honestly, we are letting go not only of a great opportunity, but also we are impediling the energy transition. So summarizing very quickly, infrastructure adequacy is paramount. Mr. Soni, who's over here, said that embrace high capacity and low energy system. And I commented that this is exactly the opposite of what we have been doing. We have been talking about high energy density systems, high capacity utilization, but that's not the system of the future. That's not going to allow us the flexibility. That's not going to allow us the resilience. If you need a resilient system, it has to be high capacity, even if the capacity utilization is lower. And I think that's a paradigm shift we have to accept now. If we are not doing it, we are not going to have a secure system. The second thing is at the distribution end, where there is so much of activity which is happening, we need much greater visibility and much greater control. We just don't have it. And this is not just India. Anywhere in the world which we don't have it. Now, with the kind of initiatives which PM has taken, if we don't have that, we are risking not only the disappointment of the users, we are risking the power system as a whole. So it's very, very important that the LDCs are equipped, load dispatch centers are equipped. We have the down level load dispatch centers as well, subsidiary centers as well. But also they need to be equipped and disciplined as well, because there is a certain lack of discipline given the nature of the ownership of those organizations as well. Harmonization of regulations across jurisdictions are very important for cross-border flow. A lot of things have improved. Nepal, Bhutan, for example, is not just frequency integrated, is fully aligned with the DSM mechanism. More of that has to happen. There will be aspects which will come, disputes which will come. We need the mechanism for resolving those disputes very quickly. So all in all, good progress, but a lot more to do as well. Appropriate price reference is critical for evolution of more products on the markets. We have made a mess of it. I think that was a consensus on the panel. If I'm calling it out in clear terms, pardon my doing so, but the price cap which has come at 10 rupees is simply just not workable. Some people will say it aloud, some people will say it quietly, but they'll all say the same thing, that price cap, current mechanisms, splitting of markets, which has happened with the HP dam and others, just not workable. We need to rework all of this and come it back. And if I'm, putting out an opinion which runs to the contrary, I'm of course keen to be corrected or this to be debated on. But this is coming out as a clear sentiment. And finally, it came down to the fact that for cross-border trade, often the approvals are case by case. There might be good reasons, but for the same reasons which I said earlier, we must be ready to take some risks and ensure certain safeguards to cover those risks, but not to the point where we are throwing away the baby with the bathwater. I think that is super important that we do that. Finally, this is a session I did not moderate, but my colleagues from KPMG were the knowledge partners for this session, and I'm going to read out the outcomes on this. It's quite aligned to what we were seeing in the previous sessions on manufacturing, which I talked about. And this session is about making India a global manufacturing hub for electrical equipment. It's a very, very large market. If you look at it, the current market is 70 billion, midterm is 130 billion, and long term is $1 trillion plus per annum market. That's the kind of market which we are seeing. We are seeing exponential growth, and as we plan for more capacity, that is going to be higher. As we plan for more renewables, that growth inevitably will be higher. As we plan for more green hydrogen and other kinds of product, green molecules, as we plan for electrification of everything which can be electrified, this will be a very high growth market. And it is an employment producing market, and then jobs are a key question. So I think it is important that we index heavily on manufacturing, and this is where the recommendations came. The fiscal incentive, financial incentive should continue with focused PLI schemes for import-dependent components, because we know that there is a sunset clause which should come with some equipment, but then there are new forms of equipment which are coming, new technologies which are coming. So PLI as a concept should not face a sunset; it should continue. Stable policy measures and taxation clarity is essential for long-term planning and strategy, and this has been across the capital-heavy sectors a big bugbear. So that's something hopefully that will go back, along with the specific cases, to the Ministry of Finance. Move from cost focus to quality focus. We are excessively cost focused. We are also focused on what's the back experience, whether a technology has 5 years of experience, 10 years of experience. If it is an innovative technology, it will not have a 10-year backstory. So I think it is important to take some risks again, but be focused on quality. Do whatever you need to do, test the quality out, but don't focus on the backstory, because then you'll get backdated equipment. We are competing for global capacity and markets, and that calls for real long-term planning. The world is looking at India as an alternative to China, and that requires long-term planning, a long-term vision. There is a lot of that vision which has already come from the government at the high level, but at the sector level, that needs to be translated into clear vision and a clear mechanisms which will give that reliability. And finally, skilling, something which, for the last 1 year, I have been very closely engaged with. This is a very, very changing story. And with AI coming in, the whole game has changed. So the way we are looking at skills have to be very different. Next week, we have an event, and Ghanshyamji is coming there, where we are exactly focusing on this, not just innovation at large, but bringing the skilling story home, the education story home, to transform our sector. So these are the things which are coming out of these deliberations as well. I'm going to stop here. and of course, possibly we'll continue the interactions.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. And next, before I invite Shri Ankit Hoshing, partner YCP Octus, I would request Chairperson CA, sir, Shri Ghanshyam Prasad ji, to kindly do the honors of welcoming Shri Ankit Hoshing, sir, as he joined us later. And now I hand over to Shri Ankit Hoshing, partner at YCP Octus Assocham, to share his reflections and summary of the discussions of their sessions. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. We had session 2 and 9. Session 2 was more on scaling up hydropower and harnessing the potential of pump storage. And session 9 was more around green hydrogen. There are specific aspects across those sessions that we will cover in this discussion. Specifically on green hydrogen, which was the discussion of the panel that ran yesterday, there are specific set of interventions or recommendations that have been discussed or presented. There were specific asks around faster clearance, especially on environment and forest, faster execution with advanced construction technology, strict monitoring of resolutions, capacity building. There were specific fiscal interventions also sought, some of which we'll cover in the subsequent slides as well. The entire discussion essentially happened in the context of how critical hydropower is for our energy market and energy security standpoint. Hydropower essentially, while we have roughly 43 gigawatt of hydropower already, it's still about a third of the overall potential that the country has. Amrit Kal envisages doubling of this capacity by 2047, and there is still a long way to go given the recent track record on hydropower development. There hasn't much that has happened over the last few years, and therefore there is a lot to be done in this context. However, we all are aware that hydropower is a very reliable and long-term energy source, and therefore that attribute has to be harnessed to the extent possible. The other element here is the pump storage hydro, where we currently, while globally we talk about roughly 90% of the energy storage being in the pump storage form, and its criticality in managing the energy transition, especially given how critical storage is to manage the duck curve as we continue to have more and more solar power that's skewing the supply profile of the overall energy ecosystem. In this context, pump storage hydro obviously provides a very long-term mature solution in this respect. It helps us balance the grid again, just like any other energy storage resource. Having said that, there is a significant difference in terms of the long-term maturity on the long-term sustenance of pump storage hydro. In the context of the value that hydropower and pump storage has, there are certain aspects which have contributed to the limited development in this space, which I just called out. We understand the challenges with it, more specifically the long term or the longer gestation period in developing this infrastructure. There's also a significant risk in terms of developing such capacities, especially on account of geological challenges or surprises, on account of environmental concerns or constraints around this, and so on and so forth. In addition, given the nature of this infrastructure, it has also been impacted by requirement of approvals that typically further extend the gestation period that it naturally has. In addition, the culmination of all of this is basically the high cost of power produced from hydropower plants. And that just makes it unviable in the market at this stage. Because the power from these projects is unviable, you can't get financing for those projects and you just get into the loop. And time extensions and cost overruns are, known to be impacting the system forever. There have been several policy reforms taken up in this context, however. A few years back, the cabinet committee declared large hydro also as renewable, which earlier used to be only hydro plants less than 25 megawatts. There have also been support by the same committee on enabling infrastructure support or provisions around that to develop or to promote development of hydropower. HPOs have been in place. There have been discussions of tariff rationalization. There have also been certain digitalization efforts, and there have also been focus on sort of normalizing or simplifying the DPRs. So that is the context in which this discussion happened. Having said that, there is a long way to go and a lot of things to be focused on, which was deliberated upon in the session yesterday. So there are broadly 5 pillars under which these conversations happened. One is essentially to make sure that risks for developers is significantly mitigated, otherwise it just becomes an unviable proposition. And there are a few aspects to it. One, I already spoke about challenge with getting clearances, more specifically on environmental and forests, which contribute to the extension of time or time overruns on these projects. Those need to be simplified or streamlined, and that will go a long way in making sure that developers also come forward to participate in this. The other challenge or the risk that we spoke about was on the geological challenges or surprises. Enhancing the baseline geology, conducting more rigorous studies around it so that that information is available to begin with to the developers so that they can plan or they can evaluate the project opportunities better, conducting analysis including EGOs and seismic analysis will go a long way in mitigating the risks and therefore making these projects more viable. The second aspect, which we were calling it out as operational facilitation, but they're more commercially driven, is basically the challenge with free power, which needs to be given out to the state governments or the local governments to begin with, right? We all know that the we all know that while the free power has been to some extent back-ended, it's still not adequate given how the cost structure stacks up from hydropower perspective. There have been deliberations and discussions in the past to either get away with or reduce significantly the free power in the initial period, and that needs to be looked at very, very closely. Another aspect is with respect to these stipulations on environmental flow, which have also significantly impacted the energy generated from these plants. Again, all impacting the commercial viability of these projects, especially in the initial years. And basically the deterrent for this has been that the first year tariffs have been so high for hydropower that it has just created that barrier for consumers to be able to consume or buy that power. That brings up the point on policy facilitation, where one key differentiator that can move the needle from a landed cost perspective from hydropower would basically be to extend the ISTS waiver. The other aspect, and I spoke about the first year tariff as an important element or aspect, would be to have an escalating tariff mechanism which can eventually reduce the burden early on from a tariff perspective. While the cash flows will need to be managed and mitigated, this mechanism will help hydropower to be more cost attractive for buyers or consumers and therefore pave way for greater adoption of hydropower. There are certain elements on market design as well that will need to be looked at. Now, hydropower has these inherent advantages, and I'm more talking about storage-based hydropower. where they are or they can significantly contribute to demand response. They can basically operate as a spinning reserve to be able to support the grid manage itself more effectively. So that needs to be valued as well as monetized effectively for hydropower to be successful. Further, in the same vein or in the same direction, discoms need to be incentivized to focus on tying up with PSPs to be able to manage their demand supply situation much better. And all of those will contribute to increased revenues or increased value for hydropower developers through the ancillary markets and therefore make it more commercially viable. More specifically, on PSPs, there is a need to align the policies for on-stream versus off-stream restrictions, as well as provide exemptions for certain taxes and duties that can make them more viable. In addition, for the off-stream or off-river projects, it is important to facilitate self-identified sites so that they can be given up on first come, first served basis, also ensuring certain budgetary support for faster implementation of these projects. So those were broadly the key suggestions or the key points that were made in the first session on hydropower and PSP. Moving on to session 9, which happened earlier today in the morning, basically on the role of green hydrogen and its derivatives. We all discussed the criticality of green hydrogen in our journey or path to decarbonization, with green hydrogen especially working as a replacement of gray hydrogen, as well as acting as a storage infrastructure or storage capability in times to come. Now, there have been significant progress in this regard with the National Green Hydrogen Mission, where the government has laid out or has an outlay of 20,000 crores, where we are talking about 5 MTPA green hydrogen production with significant 125 gigawatts of RE capacity addition, significant electrolyzer capacity addition with our 8 lakh crore investment. Further, the focus has been on developing green hydrogen across the country, not it being specific or focused on specific or limited number of states in the country. That has also been manifested in the way several states have come up with green hydrogen policies of their own to be able to incentivize development on green hydrogen and its derivatives in those respective states. While this significant progress have happened, both from the government as well as from the private sector announcing huge investment commitments in this regard, there are still several areas that need to be focused on. First, there will be a need to focus on leveraging the internal or the domestic demand that we already have. In line with global standards, there is a need also in line with RPOs, which has been sort of a success factor for development of renewable energy in the country. It's critical to have mandates for purchase or adoption or absorption of green hydrogen for hydrogen consumers. This will manifest itself into requirement on critical sectors that today consume hydrogen or ammonia, which being fertilizers, as well as industrial usage in refineries, and increasing usage that will come about in areas such as steel, in areas such as transportation and power going forward. Now, while different states are working based on the specific demand that they have, for example, in the panel we had the additional chief secretary from Kerala who spoke about their focus on utilizing this from a transport perspective, which becomes a key demand focus or a demand center from Kerala standpoint. So similarly, different pockets or different states will have to identify the niche that they want to play with from a demand perspective and focus on that from an execution standpoint, while the center supports through mandating or putting in obligations for consumption of green hydrogen. While we talk about a significant domestic demand, we are also well positioned to address the global demand that we are aware of. The total hydrogen requirement globally is roughly of the order of 100 MTPA currently and is only going to grow significantly over the next few years. We understand that there is an immediate import requirement from certain markets, including EU, Japan, and so on and so forth, of roughly 25 MTPA. And given our specific advantages in terms of low cost renewable energy, in terms of the right infrastructure, and so on and so forth, it just puts us in good stead to be able to leverage this opportunity. However, what is needed is to be able to sell or market this green hydrogen, and that will require the government to support in terms of getting into G2G agreements, specifically on ITMO, JCM, and so on and so forth, which puts us at par with the global competition to be able to sell and market this green hydrogen. In addition, there will be certain other aspects that will need to be looked at. For example, ITMO prices to be aligned with the EU ETS, which is sort of the market norm today for pricing of these attributes. In addition, there will be a focus on infrastructure development in this aspect as well. Green hydrogen and derivatives, for example, need to be included in the harmonized list of industries. We spoke about this in the panel earlier, where energy storage, for example, has been a recent addition some time back to that list. It's high time that we talk about green hydrogen development as well as part of that list, which can provide the right set of incentives in terms of longer loan tenure, in terms of specific areas of financing, including higher ECB borrowing, and so on and so forth. In addition, there is also focus on creating those export hubs. We are all aware of the 3 ports that have been designated as the hydrogen hubs in Tuticorin, Kandla, and Paradeep. The focus should be on creating more such hubs, more specifically from an SEZ EOU standpoint, to be able to significantly add to this capacity. While we talk about capacity addition on hydrogen manufacturing or development, there are certain other elements of the infrastructure that need to be equally focused on. The key contributor or the key cost component of green hydrogen happens to be renewable energy. And therefore, there needs to be a focus on streamlining supply of renewable energy as well as making sure that the cost is managed and normalized. Therefore, a suggestion is to have SECI, for instance, consolidate or aggregate this demand and on a back-to-back basis supply this to green hydrogen producers or manufacturers to be able to achieve the economies of scale or get benefited from the economies of scale as well as streamline and ensure reliable supply. Further, there is also criticality of developing the right port infrastructure, and more importantly, a point that came in the panel discussion earlier today as well, is have the right shipping ecosystem in place. There is challenge with the vehicles that can actually transport hydrogen when it comes to an export story and so on and so forth. So that also becomes very critical for us to be able to develop. Lastly, focusing on how some of this will be financed, and the speaker before me spoke about financing the overall energy transition and some of the modalities that will be critical to look at in that respect. Innovative financing for green hydrogen will also be as critical. More importantly, hydrogen is still behind the curve because it's still a nascent market. And while financing for, let's say, a standalone solar plant today is commonplace or something that's happening every day, financiers or agencies are still a little hesitant in looking at green hydrogen, and therefore facilitation on that count is also critical. Another aspect, more market related in that sense, is to look at the possibility of having USD pricing for green hydrogen, which provides better access to the global markets with the pricing benchmarks, as well as, at least initially, will also provide a natural hedge with several of the components being imported for developing green hydrogen. Those were the key points that we had discussed in the couple of sessions between yesterday on hydropower and today on green hydrogen. We can get into Q&A in that.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for that presentation of the session gist. But before we move on, we would now like to present a video message by Dr. Vibha Dhawan, Director General, the Energy and Resources Institute, TERI.
Extremely happy to note that CA is celebrating its Golden Jubilee this year. The yeoman services done by the CA in the power sector in India, starting from the framing of national plans, development of a diversified generation mix and robust interconnected power system, along with development of standards, project monitoring, research and development, capacity building, etc., is well recognized. Climate change and sustainable development are amongst the most critical challenges, which are going to assume increasing importance with every passing year due to reducing carbon budget. The power sector in India has been making significant contributions to address these, as can be seen from the achievements of nationally determined contributions well ahead of the target year of 2030, making it possible to raise the NDC targets. Apart from clean energy supply options, demand side management and energy efficiency, energy storage option, flexible generation, smart and resilient transmission and distribution systems, developing a rich understanding of consumer behavior and preferences for optimum utilization of system capacities, utilizing machine learning and artificial intelligence, recognizing the value of electricity supply, and above all, capacity building will go a long way in meeting the challenges we have before us. While energy equity and energy affordability continue to remain basic requirements of a developing country, energy security has assumed added importance in recent years. The development of appropriate technologies and resilient supply chains in the country, wherever possible, providing support to the developers till the time the technologies becomes cost effective, implementing pilot projects to develop confidence in new technologies and their performance, etc., can make us reach the destination sooner than later. Enabling policies and regulations to attract investments will go a long way in achieving self reliance. I'm very happy to note that CA has brought out policies, plans, as well as perspectives from time to time that have shown the directions to the sector. I'm sure that its ongoing efforts will continue to guide the sector. I wish them continued success.
Thank you. We are honored to have with us on the stage Sri Praveer Sinha, CEO and MD of Tata Power Company Limited. And may I now invite Sir to kindly share his thoughts on the way forward for the power sector. Let's put our hands together to welcome him.
Good afternoon, Mr. Jishnu Barua, Chairperson CRC, Mr. Ghanshyam Prasad, Chairperson CA, senior delegates on the dais, senior officials. I see Mr. Razdan was here, but he's just gone out. Mr. Verma, Mr. Arun Goel, and many of my senior colleagues, Harry, Reggie, many of them are here. So such a pleasure to be here. Mr. Soni to be here and to speak to all of you. At the outset, I would like to compliment CA for completing 50 years. Golden Jubilee is a phenomenal achievement. And I think CA has done fantastic work in last 50 years in bringing out new policy, new rules, new regulations, and as the custodian of the power sector has come up with standards which has helped the power sector improve. And the power sector of India has really improved in last 50 years. Uh, in fact, many of the changes that have happened in last 15 years in the power sector, I think CA has been right there in the front, has been taking up many initiatives which were absolutely path-breaking. Many of the other developed countries had not taken those steps. And I'm sure going forward in next 50 years, CA will continue to do much better than what they have done till now, having set new benchmarks already. So my best compliments to the chairperson CA to the senior officials. I see Mr. Ajay and others sitting over there. So I'm quite excited about the opportunity of working very closely with CA on many of the initiatives that they have taken, and they always stand by the industry, stand by the government to come up with new policies and new technology supports, which helps the industry grow. There are 3 points that I wanted to mention. We always keep on hearing that we have set a very ambitious target of 500 gigawatt by 2030, and whether we'll be able to do it. We are at 440, and how we will be able to achieve that number. I just wanted to share with you some statistics. Beginning of the century, 2000, 2001, we were just 100 gigawatt, just 100 gigawatt. So from independence to 2000, we just had added 100 gigawatt. The decade after 2011-12, we were more than 200 gigawatt. 10 years, 200 gigawatt. Today, we are for 440. So every 10 years or maybe 12 years, we double our capacity. And if we are today at 440, we were 2 years back about 400 odd, will definitely be more than 800 by 2030. We were just 4 gigawatt of solar in 2014. 2024, we are 80 gigawatt. The initial steps were very difficult. They say in Hindi, "Pehla lakh kamana bahut mushkil hota hai," then it becomes much easy. So the initial stages of setting up this capacity was very, very difficult. And I think the way the momentum has been set up, we will be able to do it. Maybe 2030, or some of it may spill over to 2031. But I think we are on the right track. The number of orders that have been placed, the way the whole sector has been planned, the way everyone is supporting. This is, in fact, one area that I find that everyone is on the same page. The developers are on the same page, the manufacturers are on the same page, the government is on the same page, the regulator is also on the same page. Many of the initiatives that have been taken by the various regulatory commissions, whether it is the central regulatory or the state, has been path-breaking, and that can happen only when you have everyone who is conscious that they have a responsibility and they need to do something which is very different. And I'm very confident that the way we have transitioned, we started from pure wind, pure solar to hybrid, and then we are now coming to bundled solutions of FDRE and all. So I think in terms of capacity addition, I don't think we should have any apprehension. We are on the right track. If something wrong externally does not happen, we should be able to make it. There may be some amount here and there we may miss out, but on an overall basis, I definitely feel that 500 gigawatt of non-carbon generation by 2030 is definitely doable and achievable. The second question that people keep on asking me is that can we have ever a non-carbon generation and non-carbon supply of power? Or do we always have to have a base load of coal? We'll have coal. It is not that coal is disappearing. And that's why we talk of energy transition. We don't talk of something which will be closed tomorrow or closed day after tomorrow. But we are talking of something which we will transition 2030, 2040, 2050. But we will definitely transition. And the quantum of coal will come down from the present 70%. It will come to 50. It will come to 40, 30. Maybe we may end up with maybe 5 or 10% of coal. But 90% will be non-carbon, and that is definitely doable. We today have very smart solutions where we are in a position to give a bundled power of solar, wind, of battery storage, of pump storage, of demand response. In fact, here in city of Delhi, we have implemented a project in North Delhi where we have 24/7 supply of power on a on a clean energy basis. So that means there is battery storage, there is solar, and there is demand response over there. So I think it is definitely doable. It is not something that is not possible. Of course, it requires some amount of technology interventions. More of batteries will come. More of batteries will come, not only of the lithium ion variety, more of stationary batteries will come, which can be sodium batteries or any of the other manganese batteries. More of smart grid technology will come, where we will have sensors which will be able to address on real time basis the consumption of energy. It can address, in fact, and monitor on real time basis every household energy, every office energy, every factory energy, every equipment energy. So it is not that it is something that we will only set up the capacity and we will not be able to monitor it. I think the way that it will progress, it's not just by creating capacity for generation or capacity for transmission, but what will be important is the way the consumption pattern will change, and the consumption pattern will decide what sort of generation capacity is to be utilized. And with today's technology, I think we should be able to do. I know there are some people from semiconductor industry, and they keep on telling me that they will produce very smart chips which will be able to address these things. And I'm very confident that the way the sector has gone through a disruption, this will become a reality. The last area is, I think we need to also look at many of the newer technologies which is happening globally. We have been talking about the small modular reactor. We just have a capacity of 8 gigawatt. We have plans. In fact, already NPCIL is implementing many projects. By 2030 or 2032, they are talking of nearly 22 gigawatt of capacity that will come. The private sector, along with the government, with public-private partnership, will be allowed in the nuclear area. And when we talk of resilience of supply, I think the backup supply will come from possibly nuclear, apart from, of course, the coal, which will continue for quite some time. But I think what is important is that many of the new technologies which we had not seen earlier will undergo a transformation, will go a change. Many of the ways that we produce energy, we have been talking of the same polysilicon. I don't think in 10 years polysilicon will be the only technology. It will be possibly one of the technologies, but there will be technologies which will be thin film technologies. There will be technologies where peroxides will be there. There will be technology where organic materials will be there. There will be nanotechnologies which will help uh, organic materials to produce energy in a much smaller space than what is being today consumed by photovoltaic. So I think the technology interventions that will happen in the power sector will be phenomenal. And I feel that for more than 100 years, we had Mr. Thomas Alva Edison to follow, single direction of flow of electrons. Today, the world has changed. Today, we have multiple directions of flow of electrons, and along with flow of electrons is the flow of data that is happening, and it's happening on real time basis. And that, I think, is the game changer going forward. uh, I strongly believe that for Indian power sector, possibly next 2-3 decades will be the possibly the next will be the best decades for everyone. For all people who are working, they always used to feel that technology is something which only people in IT or communication know. I think people in power sector are also smart enough, and they know technology, and they will be able to implement and utilize it in a much smarter way. And I think the opportunities that it will create will be phenomenal. Of course, it will create challenges. Mr. Razdan mentioned about EV, but I don't think these are insurmountable. Uh, I have been working on electric vehicle. We have more than 1 lakh home chargers. We have 6,000 public chargers, more than 2,000 bus chargers. It's not that we have faced anywhere that we could not supply electricity or anything like that. In fact, most of the charging people do in their homes, or whatever little is done at their workplaces. Very little of it is done on public charging. Of course, the penetration of vehicles have to increase. So what I want to say is that today there is no issue in the power sector that cannot be addressed. And I'm sure with CA, with Mr. Ghanshyam Prasad ji, and with the support of everyone, we will be able to overcome the hurdles. It's not that we did not have hurdles. We had hurdles. We had COVID, during which all the plants operated. There was never a supply constraint. There was never a supply disruption. We had incidents later than that when war happened. Many of the countries were impacted, but fortunately in India we did not have that. People talked about coal. I do know that in 2012, on a daily basis, every day at 7 o'clock, there used to be a call of checking up how much of coal you have in your stock in your plants. But we have come a long way since then. Today, we don't talk about every day. We have 15 days or 10 days of stock with us. So I think the Indian power sector has done exceedingly well. And this is because of everyone's contribution. So I think we should give a round of applause to everyone who is part of the power sector. And I think sometimes in crisis we do much better, but definitely we always come together and cross all hurdles. So my best wishes once again to Ghanshyam ji and CA, many more years of success. And I do look forward to actively participate in the power sector transformation in the country. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, sir, for your insightful address. Before we move on, we would like to present a video message by Shri Ganesh Kothavade, President and Head of Power Distribution Solutions Business, ABB Limited.
It is an honor to be part of this special moment as we celebrate the Golden Jubilee of Central Electricity Authority. My heartiest congratulations to CA and the whole team for this milestone. For many years, CA has been the cornerstone in shaping the Indian power sector, ensuring delivery of reliable and affordable electricity to all. As we look into the future, achieving energy independence by 2047 is a vital element for the Vikasit Bharat vision. Particularly, Panchamrit commitment announced at COP26, which is the foundation for greener and sustainable future. The ever-growing demand for sustainable energy is the driving force behind the government's aim to build 500 gigawatt by 2030. I'm proud to say India has achieved fourth position globally in terms of installed green energy capacity. However, the larger goal can only be achieved if we collectively address some of the key challenges, such as integrating the renewable to the existing grid, as renewable sources are intermittent and geographically dispersed, which requires significant upgrades in grid infrastructure. Energy storage is one of the pressing needs to ensure the stability and reliability of the green energy produced. All of this need a resilient and robust infrastructure, investment in smart technologies, research and the development of skilled workforce with education and training in these areas to ensure we have the right talent in this transition. The next generation of engineers, researchers, and technicians will play a vital role in building an energy secured India. Consistent regulatory support is very critical to achieve these goals. Long-term policies, incentives for local production, regulatory support around grid integration, and energy storage would immensely help in achieving these goals. India's global footprint is rewarding. We are actively pursuing international cooperation in the power sector to achieve our energy transition goals, helping the country achieve ambitious targets for renewable energy and grid modernization. As we celebrate the Golden Jubilee of CA, let's look forward to continued collaboration towards building these goals, keeping sustainability as a foundation of our actions. I wish you all the best.
Thank you. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have the privilege in inviting Shri Jishnu Barwaji, Chairperson of CERC, to kindly share his valuable insights on the regulatory framework and the future of the power sector. Let's put our hands together to welcome Shri Barwaji.
Mr. Ghanshyam Prasad, Chairperson CEA, members, staff present and past, who have all contributed to this long journey of 50 years of CEA. Dignitaries on the dais and off the dais, ladies and gentlemen. At the very outset, on this very, very special occasion of Golden Jubilee celebrations, I would like to extend my heartfelt congratulations, my heartiest congratulations to Mr. Ghanshyam Prasad and the entire CEA family on achieving this milestone. Friends, the journey of 50 years is truly a incredible feat. And this has been made possible by invaluable contributions of current and previous and past chairpersons and members of CEA, as also the dedicated staff of the organization. Born under the Electricity Act of 1948 and continued under the Electricity Act of 2003 with a redefined and expanded role, CEA has come a long way. CEA as a national planner in the electricity sector plays a crucial role in shaping the future of our nation's power supply. It serves as a technical arm of the Government of India as an institution responsible, among other things, for setting grid standards for connectivity, establishing regulations on safety, and overseeing metering standards. It is the CEA that formulates national electricity plans for generation transmission and sets the tone for investment in the power sector. Indeed, I do not know of any other country of our size and system where you have a federal system in place which has an authority of this kind. Now, coming to these two documents, the National Electricity Plan for Generation and National Electricity Plan for Transmission, both these documents entail a comprehensive exercise with simulation of data and scenarios. Equally important is the electric power supply public electric power surveys published by the CEA, which estimates a demand of growth of power in the sector. Demand estimations, the starting point for planning and investment in generation and transmission, is a crucial aspect of the power sector. To add to this, CEA has of late been engaging itself in evolving resource adequacy guidelines for the states to plan their power procurement optimally. I am given to understand that all the states have now have a the resource adequacy plan formulated by CEA in conjunction with the local authorities in each state, and all these have been uploaded. It's now for these electricity commissions, respective electricity commission, to vet the adequacy plans, resource adequacy plans. Now, all this exercise actually completes the value chain of planning. Through progressive intervention of CEA, the Indian power sector has made significant advancements in technology, from subcritical technology to supercritical technology, and now ultra supercritical technology in the generation segment. A shift or a gradual shift or a speedy shift from 220 kilowatts to 765 kilowatt transmission system, and now progressing towards a 1200 kV transmission system, a traditional distribution grid to a modernized smart grid of the electric system, are all the changes that are taking place in the recent past and will also continue in the future. As the focus is shifting to the adoption of clean energy technology, I look forward to the CEA playing a leading role in promoting the development of indigenous technologies for the absorption of clean energy in an affordable manner. And I again underline the word affordable manner, and that's very, very important and must not be lost sight of. What is the future scenario in 2047? And what about energy independence? As we look towards 2047, India's power sector is set to undergo a profound transformation. To illustrate this evolution, let me categorize the post-reform growth and development of the power sector into three distinct phases. The first decade, from 2003 to 2030, witnessed big investment, major investment in the thermal power generation to meet shortages and increasing baseload demand. In the second period, from 2000 to 2023, which has just got over, investment in renewable generation picked up substantially. Now, in the third decade, from 2023 to 2033, there is a balanced demand for renewable energy, hydro energy, thermal energy, nuclear energy, along with expansion of transmission capacities and capabilities at the ISTS level, intrastate level, and local grids. This would be in addition to new technologies for grid stability, energy storage, and shifting. This phase, that is the ongoing phase from up to 2033, is also anticipated to be the most happening and challenging phase yet for the power sector. With a rapidly changing landscape of the economy and consequently of the power sector, effective power planning amidst uncertainty will be essential. I'm sure that CEA would adopt a positive and proactive approach, aligning its role with the pace of development and offering technical guidance to steer that sector forward. The theme of this conclave, brainstorming conflict as it has been labeled, set by CEA, Indian power sector scenario by 2047 is futuristic and a step towards setting our goal and roadmap for energy independence laid out by our Honorable Prime Minister during his India 2047 speech on August the 15th to 2021. Energy independence requires consideration of three pillars: energy security, energy affordability, and environmental sustainability. The goal of achieving energy independence by 2047 requires the strengthening of each pillar and is likely to serve as a guide for the regulatory approach for India's power sector. So all three are important: affordability, sustainability, and reliability and security. CEA works in close partnership with CERC to drive the development of India's power sector. As you know, the chairperson is also an ex officio member of the CERC, and together the two institutions play complementary roles in promoting affordability, reliability, and environmental sustainability. We are implementing regulations that prioritize renewable energy to ensure that both industry and ordinary consumers have access to power at an efficient cost. At the same time, we are committed to maintaining an adequate power supply to support growth, encouraging innovation in energy storage and shifting, and aligning our grid modernization efforts with broader goals. Looking ahead, future interventions may need to focus on emerging industries such as battery recycling sector, to mention just one, to ensure India's green transition is both sustainable and resilient. In this context, I find the topics of different sessions which have been already, gist of which has already been given by the presenters today, adequately challenging the addressing the challenges and opportunities of the power sector and clean energy transition. The discussion on importance of baseload plants, ways for successful energy transition, and challenges in financing is indeed going to be very useful. The use of hydrogen-based energy system is an evolving stage. And to achieve the objectives of the National Green Hydrogen Mission by 2030, we need to address the challenges through brainstorming. The discussions on the modernization of transmission and distribution systems is important to develop a robust and resilient grid. The discussion on ambitious and visionary topics to make India a global manufacturing hub of electric equipment would be a good initiative in view of the growing demand for electrical equipment in India to reduce the reliance on imports and strengthen the economy. Now, let me conclude. As we look forward towards 2047, India's power sector will most certainly undergo a profound transformation. The regulator's role will be to ensure that our regulatory frameworks not only keep pace with these transformation, but also actively drive it. We must embrace technological advancements, promote sustainability, and foster an environment where India's growth story is sustained. India's energy independence is not only a goal, it is a fundamental necessity for our economic resilience and global leadership. If we employ strategies to deliver on three fronts: energy security, energy affordability, and environmental sustainability, I'm confident that we will not only achieve our energy goals by 2047, but also pave the way for a more resilient and inclusive energy future for all Indians. Together, let us work together towards an energy secure, sustainable, and self-reliant India by 2047. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we present a video message by Shri Shripad Yesso Naik ji, Honorable Minister of State for Power, Government of India.
नमस्कार। 2047 तक भारत को वैश्विक आर्थिक महाशक्ति उसमें बदलने की हमारी साहसिक दृष्टि के साथ बिजली क्षेत्र इस यात्रा के केंद्र में होगा। यह न केवल विकास का स्तंभ है, बल्कि हमारे लोगों की भलाई के लिए उत्प्रेरक भी। पिछले एक दशक में हमने महत्वपूर्ण प्रगति की है, अपनी उत्पादन क्षमता को बढ़ाया है और विश्व मंच पर नवीनकरणीय ऊर्जा उत्पादन में अग्रगणी बनकर उभरे। जैसे जैसे हम आगे बढ़ते हैं, हमें जलवायु परिवर्तन से निपटने और पर्यावरण की रक्षा के प्रति अपने दृढ़ समर्पण के साथ अपनी गतिशील अर्थव्यवस्था की बढ़ती मांगों को सावधानी पूर्वक संतुलित करने की आवश्यकता है। आधुनिकीकरण करके भारत की हरित ऊर्जा क्षमता का दोहन करने का समय आ गए। प्रौद्योगिकियों को अपनाकर उन्नत बिजली भंडारण प्रणालियों को लागू कर और हमारे ग्रिड बुनियादी ढांचे का, जैसा कि हम भारत के केंद्रीय विद्युत प्राधिकरण का स्वर्ण जयंती वर्ष मना रहे हैं। मैं भारत के बिजली क्षेत्र को आकार देने में उनकी भूमिका को स्वीकार करना चाहता हूँ। सीईए ने दूरदर्शी नीतियों को तैयार करने और विश्वसनीय बिजली आपूर्ति की गारंटी देने में महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका निभाई है, जिससे हमारे विविध देश के हर कोने को सशक्त बनाया जा सके। मैं इस 2 दिवसीय विचार मंथन कार्यक्रम के आयोजन के लिए सीए की सराहना करता और उद्योग विशेषज्ञों के लिए बिजली क्षेत्र में उभरती चुनौतियों और समाधानों से संबंधित गहन चर्चा और सहयोगात्मक सोच में शामिल होने के लिए एक मंच के रूप में कार्य करे। धन्यवाद। जय हिंद। नमस्कार।
Hardik Dhanyavad, sir. We thank the Honorable Minister, sir, for his this very positive and motivating message we had. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I have the privilege in inviting Shri Ghanshyam Prasad ji, Honorable Chairperson of the Central Electricity Authority, for the concluding remarks and for words of thanks. Let's put our hands together to welcome Shri Ghanshyam Prasad ji.
Good evening. I think after a long day yesterday, with inaugural and having 10 sessions and the valedictory now. Probably I don't need to add much, but I'll only say that the beginning has been made. Probably so far we have been talking about 2030 time frames, 2032 time frames, but now at least the beginning has been made to discuss about a roadmap to 2047 when we are going to attain 100th year of our independence. And we must be prepared and we must start thinking and acting on this. So in the deliberations, what I have seen in the last 2 days is the recommendations that have come. They are broad at present. Let me thank all the participants, all the speakers, everyone who could spare their time, had come to Delhi and try to give their views. The recommendations, the two knowledge partners that we had, KPMG and ENY, they assisted us. And these two knowledge partners, they have done their job. Even SHM also did their job in two of the sessions. And all these three, we have noted down, we have seen the recommendations. And these recommendations, what I propose now is we will not stop here since it is just a beginning. And each and every recommendations, my plan is to have a task force and task force of the experts so that at least we drill down to the finest details and try to see and evolve an action point which can really take us and try to see that the implementation of these recommendations happens in reality. Normally, what had been my experience is normally we go in the workshop, do the brainstorming, and after the workshop, that gets drained out. I don't want that thing to happen, and that is how I did not name it as a workshop or conference. I said it is going to be a brainstorming where we come out with the ideas, we come out with the recommendations, we come out with the action plans, and we work on that action plan, and we'll have continuous engagement with all these stakeholders going forward from here. And all of them, whether it is FICCI, SHM, CII, APP, APTA, or even from the distribution side, manufacturer side, IMA, anybody on that matter, and we'll try to see that each and every recommendations that have been given today, we will take it forward and try to plan for it as well. So as far as this session is goes, let me once again thank Jishnu Baruaji for coming and sparing your time for this particular session. In fact, earlier sessions we didn't had any regulators, so I thought it will be very apt to have a regulatory person from the helm of the affairs in the regulatory space to give that perspective as well. So thank you so much, sir, for coming. My thanks goes to Dr. Pravesh Sinha, who also spared his time to come and grace this particular valedictory sessions. Two knowledge partners, KPMG and ENY, a gentleman from SHM, and off and all, Mr. Gupta from FICCI, who also helped in organizing the team. Thank you so much, all the dignitaries who are sitting on the dais, and all of you who are sitting still to hear us, to be a part and parcel of the journey that we are likely to take up from here. And I assure you that CA will definitely do the needful and will try to be a partner in the journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed. And I would request all our dignitaries on the dais to kindly come forward for a group photograph. And ladies and gentlemen, let's have a standing ovation for all of them for such a wonderful event that we had over the last 2 days. Let's keep the applause going louder for one time. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we now conclude this valedictory session. Thank you all for your participation, and we look forward to continuing this journey towards a brighter, cleaner, and more connected energy future in India. Thank you once again to each one of you for making this event a huge success that it was. Have a wonderful evening ahead. Safe drive home. Good evening and namaskar.
कुछ ये नहीं कि एक को देख सकता था या और एक चीज इधर आओ इधर ठीक है कमले आ रहे हैं इसमें डाल के इसको ये पैक कर भी दें सर का मोमेंटो देखा मोमेंटो उसका तो पीछे वाले सर का मोमेंटो हो गया ऐसे बताओ ना प्लांट आया ही नहीं तो बिल्कुल लेट एक मिनट में प्लांट हाँ क्या करती बता मैं ला दे तुमको पास से देख